Do you feel stagnant with your art? Here are some things that really helped me. Go away from trends and go away from social media in general for a time and start getting into historical art styles. And this doesn't just mean the Renaissance time period. Look into the Art Nouveau movement, the arts and crafts movement, the postmodern movement, or the Cubist movement, or the Vienna Succession movement. Go onto Pinterest and type in vintage and see what you can find from the time period before digital art was created. Technology and the internet is such a wonderful thing, but one of the downfalls of social media is that there tends to be an echo chamber. And it's good to also look into artists that use different mediums than you do, or that haven't been around for the past 2 or 3 decades. Another thing to do is to look into art or illustrations from different regions than you are currently in, whether it is Japanese ukiyo-e, Islamic textiles or calligraphy, Nigerian sculptures. Try immersing yourself in the work of people from different cultures to diversify the way that you perceive art and to look into how one can interpret the world outside of your culture bubble. Go from focusing on your style to focusing on your skills, what you can improve with your art, what do you need to do better with your art that you've been pushing off for some time because it's hard. Try taking an art class, whether it's online or even if it's in your community. Do some realistic studies. Your style changes a lot as an artist, but your skill, it generally improves with time as you do more and experiment, especially if you're always trying to learn new things. I once did a 100 portrait study in a sketchbook, and the difference in how much I started experimenting with it as time went on was amazing, and it really taught me how to push what a simple micron or colored pencils were capable of as I got towards the end. A lot of kids in art college come in feeling pretty confident, and some of them get pretty cocky with what they're able to do and what medium they're set in, whether it's like digital art, if they're big on digital art, or if they're big on saying, I'm never gonna add color to my artwork. And then professors come in and they try to push them further into things that they are uncomfortable with. And this is by design, because the result is improvement. I went into art college only doing graphite portraits and cartoon illustrations, and I was pushed to do paintings that made me find my love with watercolor, which is something I hadn't done before. And I was pushed again during an assignment my junior year where my teacher tasked me with pushing away from just using black to shade and instead seeing what I could do with just color. And I can say now that even 3 years later, I do not use black anymore to shade. The human face is composed of like hundreds and hundreds of different colors and shades that you would never ever know if you weren't trying to replicate it. To sum it all up, don't use the same medium for all of your work. If you're a digital artist, experiment with physical mediums. And if you're a painter or someone who's a diehard with traditional work, try using digital work because you can really do a lot with it. We ended up taking in college a class called, I think it was using traditional, and it was something about mixing digital and traditional artwork. So our teacher would have us do a piece either traditionally first or digitally first, and then we would have to go back and either print out the digital work and put something over it so we'd be able to draw over that, or he would have us take a traditional piece that we painted or we drew or whatever, and then scan it and then go over it digitally. And the results were really interesting because, digital art can look flat if you do it in a specific way, if you're using, just cell shading or which, nothing wrong with that. You can make beautiful things that are relatively one-dimensional. I mean, that's what the Art Nouveau movement was based on. But when people begin to mess around with texture, going from traditional to digital, there's a lot that you can do with digital artwork that I don't see a lot of people try to unpack. And there's a lot that you can do with traditional artwork that I haven't seen a lot of people do. Some of my favorite sketchbooks are ones where I did collages and I drew over collages. When I get bored with my sketchbook, if I don't like a piece in a sketchbook, I'll just take pieces of paper and I'll shred them and I'll glue them on top. The basis of creativity is improvisation. When you are in a position where you need to improvise, that's when you get creative. If you make a mess on a piece, like let's say you get like a spot or something on that, you have to go pretty quickly to try to figure out how to salvage the piece. And I think when you're put in that position, you put yourself in that position intentionally by trying to work with things in a different way than you're comfortable with. That's where your creativity begins to shine. Not everyone is creative. I understand that. Not all artists are creative. There are some artists that just really like doing realism, or they really just like doing studies. And there's a place for that. That's why we have scientific illustrations. But for people who are creative and feel like they've hit a rut, maybe look into what you're feeding yourself, what you're feeding your mind on a daily basis. Is it just people who do anime art on Instagram? Where's your influence coming from? What are you feeding yourself? If you need inspiration, definitely go on Pinterest and definitely look around you, or go to the library and pick up art books from artists that you maybe have never known about before. I have about 4 different art books on my shelf, and whenever I get in that rut, I'll usually just take them out and go through them and look at them and try to see what technique the artists use, or just generally what the style is. Make art, make ugly art, make good art, just keep making art. This is my son's yearly portrait. Here's last year's portrait, and then here's this year's portrait. Thank you so much for watching.